Hello, dear listener. I'm so glad you're here. Because today, you're not just going to learn English. You're going to feel it, hear it, and live it through the power of a real story. This isn't just grammar and vocabulary. This is adventure, emotion, drama. In today's story, you'll walk the streets of ancient Athens. You'll meet one of the world's greatest thinkers. And you'll travel through time, ideas, and powerful moments, all while learning English naturally, beautifully, and step by step. You'll hear simple, clear language, short, dramatic sentences, and pauses that give your mind time to understand and feel every word. So, get comfortable, take a deep breath, and open your heart. Because this story, it's not just about Plato. It's about you, your questions, your journey, your future. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Boy in Athens. Before the thinker, there was a boy with wide eyes, a boy who listened more than he spoke, a boy who looked at the stars and whispered, "Why?" His name was Aristocles, but many would know him later as Plato. Now, listen. The year is around 428 BC. The city, Athens, proud, shining, full of power and promise. Great temples reach to the sky. Statues of gods stand in the sunlight. And in the marketplace, voices rise and fall like waves on the sea. Men argue. Women sell bread. Children run between marble columns, laughing, shouting, chasing dreams. And in one house, large, noble, full of wealth, a child is born. "It's a boy," the midwife says, holding the small, wriggling baby up to the light. His parents, Ariston and Perictione, smile. They do not know yet what this child will become. No one does. But fate, oh, fate, is already watching. From the start, Aristocles is different. While other boys play with wooden swords, he asks questions. "Father, why does the moon follow me when I walk?" "Mother, where do thoughts come from?" "Teacher, how do we know what is true?" The adults laugh. Some shake their heads. Some grow quiet, unsure how to answer. "You think too much," one uncle says, ruffling his hair. But the boy only smiles. He reads scrolls before most boys can write their names. He listens to old stories from Homer, tales of heroes and gods, but wonders aloud, were they real or just ideas? At night, when the stars shine above Athens, Aristocles stands at the window, his eyes full of wonder, and slowly, quietly, a hunger grows inside him. Not a hunger for food or riches, but for something deeper, for truth. His family is proud. They say, "Our son will be a great man, a leader, a speaker, maybe even a ruler one day." But Aristocles, he dreams of something else. Not power, not war, not gold, but wisdom. He begins to train in gymnastics, yes, strong of body as well as mind. His shoulders grow broad, his movements graceful. Some say he fights like a god from Olympus. That's when he gets the nickname Plato, Broad One. But inside, he is still the same boy, quiet, watching, wondering. One day, walking through the streets, he hears a strange voice, not loud, not angry, but strong, full of questions. What is justice? What is courage? Can anyone be truly wise? Plato stops. He turns. There, standing barefoot in the dust, is a man with a sharp face, kind eyes, and no fancy clothes. Just words. Words like arrows. Words that shake the air. That man is Socrates. But that part, that meeting, is still to come. First, Plato must grow. He learns poetry, music, math. He trains in reason and logic. He walks the city, listening to debates in the agora, watching the plays at the theater, hearing the voices of the people, rich and poor, free and slave, wise and foolish. Athens is alive, but it is also uneasy. There is war, the Peloponnesian War, long, bitter, and cruel. The city fights against Sparta. People grow tired, angry, afraid. Plato sees soldiers march. He sees friends go and not return. He hears his mother cry at night, and he begins to ask new questions, harder questions. Why do we fight? Why do people suffer? Can a city be just or only people? His mind is like a storm. Ideas come, crash, vanish, return. But still, he waits. He watches. Until one day, everything changes. Plato is now a young man, strong, smart, still searching. And then he hears that voice again, that strange man in the street, asking questions no one dares to ask, not giving answers, but pushing others to think. Plato steps closer. He listens, and something inside him lights up. This is not just a man. This is a door to something greater. Truth, wisdom, philosophy. And soon, Plato will walk through it. But not yet, for now he is still the boy from Athens, the one who looked at the stars and whispered, "Why?" Chapter 2. The day he met Socrates. Some meetings change everything. And this meeting would change not just a life, but the future of philosophy itself. The sun was high over Athens. The streets were loud, full of voices and footsteps, horses and carts. People moved quickly, buying, selling, shouting, laughing. And in the middle of all this noise stood a young man, Plato. He was tall now, his body strong, his eyes sharper than ever. But more than that, he was thinking, always thinking. He walked the agora, the great marketplace, not to shop, but to listen. Every day, people gathered here to speak and argue about life, politics, money, even the gods. Plato watched. He listened. Sometimes he smiled. Sometimes he frowned. He had learned many things, from teachers, from books, from the world itself. But still, something was missing. He didn't know what. Not yet. And then he heard it. A voice. Strange. Calm, but full of fire. It wasn't loud, but it stopped him like a sudden wind. "Tell me," the voice said, "what is justice?" Plato turned. There was a small crowd around an old man. He had no shoes, no rich clothes, just a simple robe and a face full of lines. But his eyes, oh, his eyes, they burned. The man stood with his hands behind his back, speaking not with anger, but with curiosity. Real curiosity. If you say justice is obeying the law, then what if the law is wrong? If you say it is helping your friends and hurting your enemies, then what if your friends are wrong and your enemies are right? People laughed nervously. Some shook their heads. Some walked away. But Plato stayed. His heart was beating faster. Who was this man? He stepped closer. The man noticed him and smiled. "Ah," he said, "a young thinker. Tell me, young man, what is wisdom?" Plato blinked. He opened his mouth, then closed it. He didn't know what to say. The man laughed, not to mock him, but gently, kindly. "That is the beginning of wisdom," the man said. "To know that you do not know." His name was Socrates, and from that day, Plato followed him. Not as a slave follows a master, but as a thirsty man follows a river. Day after day, Plato watched Socrates speak. He never gave answers. He asked questions. Always questions. He spoke to everyone, young and old, rich and poor, soldier and servant. He did not fear kings. He did not flatter the crowds. He only wanted one thing: truth. One morning, Plato found Socrates speaking to a soldier. "You say you are brave," Socrates said. "But what is courage? Running into battle? Not feeling fear? Or something else?" The soldier laughed. "You talk like a child," he said. But Socrates only smiled. "Then answer like a man." To some, Socrates was annoying, a fly buzzing around their heads. To others, he was dangerous. But to Plato, he was light. For the first time, Plato felt the fog in his mind begin to lift. Not because he had all the answers, but because someone was finally asking the right questions. At night, they would sit together, under the stars, on the steps of a temple, near the sea with waves whispering in the dark. Socrates would ask, "What makes a good life?" And Plato would think and speak from his heart. Sometimes they disagreed. Sometimes they said nothing for hours. But Plato was changing. Inside, slowly, deeply, forever. He stopped dreaming of being a poet, or a politician, or a hero. He had found his purpose: to search for wisdom, to love it, to chase it like a flame, to become a philosopher. But the world outside did not understand. People laughed at Socrates. Some called him a madman. Some called him dangerous. And slowly, voices grew louder. Whispers, accusations, threats. But that part, that pain, was still to come. For now, Plato was alive with questions, alive with thought. He would go home at night, lie awake in bed, and feel his mind spinning. What is beauty? What is the soul? Is there a world beyond this one? And in the darkness, he would whisper one name: Socrates. Yes, scribe, some meetings do change everything. That day in the marketplace, when Plato heard a barefoot man asking strange, powerful questions, the boy became a student. The student found a teacher, and the future began to move. Chapter 3: A Mind on Fire. The world was full of questions, and Plato was burning to answer them. He had tasted something now, something powerful, not wine, not fame, not even love, but thought, deep, difficult, dangerous thought. And once you taste it, you can never go back. Under the open sky, in the noisy streets, in quiet corners of the city, Plato followed Socrates, not like a shadow, but like a spark chasing the flame. They walked and talked. Endless walks, endless talks. Socrates did not teach with books. He used words, questions, pauses, puzzles. He would say, "Plato, what is a good life?" And when Plato tried to answer, Socrates would smile and ask more. "And what makes it good? For you? For others? For the soul?" Sometimes Plato felt lost, but still he kept walking, kept thinking, kept burning. In the heart of Athens, by the temples and fountains, they spoke with merchants, soldiers, poets, even children. "What is justice?" Socrates asked a rich man. "Doing what the law says," the man replied. "Ah," said Socrates, "and if the law says to punish an innocent person, is that justice?" The man turned red, angry, confused. But Socrates was calm. Plato watched, amazed. At night, he would sit alone, staring at the stars, and his mind would whisper, "What is the soul? Where does it go when we die? Is there something perfect, something pure, behind this world?" He wrote down his thoughts, not as answers, but as dialogues, pages filled with voices, with questions, with ideas in battle. He wasn't just learning from Socrates now. He was creating something new. But Athens... Oh, Athens. She did not love those who asked too much. This was a time of fear, of shadows. The war with Sparta had ended, but the peace was weak. The people were tired, angry, suspicious. They wanted strong leaders, clear rules, easy answers. And Socrates? He gave them none. He only gave questions. Dangerous, they whispered. He makes young people doubt everything. He doesn't believe in the gods. None of it was true. But fear doesn't care about truth. One morning, Plato found Socrates sitting by a well. His face was quiet, but his eyes held something dark. "They have charged me," he said softly. "They say I corrupt the youth and dishonor the gods." Plato couldn't breathe. "But that's madness," he cried. "You do nothing wrong." Socrates just smiled. "Ah, Plato, the world is not always kind to those who question it." The trial came. Crowds filled the court. Some came to see justice. Others came to see a show. Socrates stood before them, calm, proud, honest. He spoke not to save himself, but to speak truth. "I do not know everything," he said, "but I know that I know nothing, and that makes me wise." Plato was there, watching, praying, but the votes were cast, guilty. The punishment? Death. Plato's heart broke. He begged Socrates to run, to hide, to escape. But Socrates shook his head. "If I run," he said, "what would that teach the world? That truth is only for the safe, that courage ends at danger?" And so, he drank the poison, calm, brave, free. Plato wept. The flame in his mind flickered, dimmed, almost died. He walked the city in silence. Everything felt empty, lost. But slowly, slowly, the fire returned, not with joy, but with purpose. He remembered every word, every step, every question, and he made a vow. He would not let Socrates be forgotten. He would write, he would teach, he would ask, again and again and again. Because truth did not die with Socrates, it only changed hands. Plato's mind was now a storm. He thought of new ideas, new visions of justice, of the soul, of reality itself. He began to wonder, what if the world we see, the tables, the trees, the people, are only shadows? What if there is another world, a world of forms, perfect, unchanging, invisible? What if true beauty, true justice, true good lived there? And this world? Only a copy, a reflection. The questions never stopped. But now, they were his. Plato was no longer just a student. He was becoming a philosopher. Chapter 4. The Death of Socrates. Sometimes truth costs everything. It was early morning. The city of Athens was quiet. Too quiet. Even the birds seemed to sing more softly that day. And in a cold stone room, behind thick walls, an old man waited. His name was Socrates. Plato stood outside the prison gate. His hands were shaking. His chest was tight. He had not slept. He had barely eaten. His teacher, his friend, his light in the world, was going to die. And there was nothing he could do to stop it. He remembered the trial like it was yesterday. The loud voices, the angry faces, the cruel questions. Socrates had stood calmly, like a rock in a storm. He did not beg. He did not lie. He simply told the truth. "I am not wise," he had said, "but I love wisdom. I question because I care. And if you silence me, who will make you think?" Some people clapped. Others wanted blood. The vote was close, but it was done. Death by poison. Now. The day had come. Plato entered the prison, slowly, carefully. The room was small, cold, empty, except for one man and a cup on the table. Socrates looked up and smiled. "Ah," he said softly, "Plato, you came." Plato tried to speak, but no words came. His eyes were full of tears. He dropped to his knees and took Socrates' hand. "Why?" he whispered. "Why won't you escape? We can still save you. We can take you far away. You don't have to die." Socrates just looked at him, kind, gentle, strong. "My dear Plato," he said, "if I run from death, what lesson would I leave behind? We must live with honor and die with honor." There was a silence. Then Socrates turned to the others in the room. A few students, a few friends. He began to speak, not with anger, not with fear, but with peace. "The soul," he said, "is not broken by death. Our bodies are like clothes, and one day we must take them off. But the soul lives on." Plato listened, every word carving itself into his heart. He wanted to scream, to shake the heavens, to tear the law to pieces. But instead, he sat still and cried quietly. The guard brought the cup, a small bowl of dark liquid. Hemlock. Socrates took it with calm hands. "Don't be sad," he said. "Death is not the end, only a change." He looked at Plato once more and whispered, "Write it down. Let them remember." Then he drank. The room was still. Socrates lay down calmly. He spoke no more, and slowly, slowly, his body went cold. Plato's heart broke in two. His teacher was gone. The one who taught him to think, to ask, to live with courage, gone. Athens had killed one of its greatest minds because he questioned, because he challenged, because he dared to search for truth. Plato walked the streets in silence. He looked at the temples, the courts, the statues, and he asked himself, how could a city of such beauty be so blind? But grief did not defeat him. Pain did not stop him. Because even though Socrates was gone, his words remained. Plato began to write. His hands shook at first, but soon the words flowed. Dialogues, arguments, ideas. He wrote down everything. Every question Socrates asked. Every answer that changed him. Every moment of light. He made sure the world would never forget. He wrote not as a student, but as a guardian of memory, of truth, of philosophy. Years later, people would read his words and say, this is where it began. But for Plato, it had already ended and begun again. All in one day. The day truth cost everything. Chapter 5. Journeys of the Spirit. To find truth, he had to leave everything behind. After the death of Socrates, Plato could no longer stay in Athens. The streets were too quiet, the statues too still. The people, the same people who once listened to Socrates, had now turned their backs. And Plato? He could not breathe there, not yet. So, he packed his things, a few scrolls, a few coins, his sandals, and he walked away. He did not know where the road would take him, but he knew he had to go. If truth is a light, he whispered, then maybe I can still follow it, even in the dark. His first journey was east, to the land of Egypt. There, everything was different. The language, the gods, the people. But Plato listened. He listened to the priests, the storytellers, the dreamers. They spoke of the stars, of numbers, of the soul as something eternal. He stood in temples as old as time. He watched the Nile flow like a silver ribbon through the land, and slowly, new thoughts began to form. What if all life is connected? What if knowledge is passed like water, from hand to hand, from age to age? Next, he traveled west, to Italy, to the schools of Pythagoras. There, he studied mathematics and music and the strange, beautiful patterns of the world. He learned that numbers were not just for counting, but for understanding the harmony of the universe. 1, 2, 3, they said. These are not just numbers. They are the rhythm of creation. Plato was amazed. So truth can be felt, he thought, not just in words, but in sound, in shape, in order. He kept traveling to Sicily, to the island of Syracuse. There, he met kings, rulers, men of power. He tried to teach them philosophy. A good ruler, he said, must be wise, must know justice, must love truth more than gold. But they laughed at him. Wisdom in politics, they said. That is a game for fools. Plato sighed. He had hoped to build a better world, but power was deaf to wisdom. And still, he kept walking. He met merchants, builders, sailors, priests. Everywhere he listened. Everywhere he asked. And every place gave him a piece of the puzzle. He saw that people everywhere wanted the same things: to love, to learn, to live in peace. But they were lost, confused, afraid, like children in a dark room. Plato knew what he had to do. He could not just wander forever. He had to return to Athens, to the city that broke his heart. Because there, in the very place that killed his teacher, he would build something new. Something that could not be silenced. A home for ideas, a place for young minds to grow. A school, a garden of wisdom. But that is for another chapter. For now, we stay with the traveler. One night, far from home, Plato sat beside a fire. The stars were bright above him. He looked up and said softly, "I have seen many lands, many people, many truths. But still, the greatest journey is within." And so, his body rested, but his spirit kept moving. Chapter 6, The Academy. A dream becomes a school, and a school becomes a legacy. Plato was home, back in Athens, the city of marble and memory, of questions and sorrow, the city that once broke his heart. But he was not the same man now. He had walked many roads. He had spoken with kings. He had studied with priests. He had listened to the stars. And now, he was ready. He remembered the promise he made the day Socrates died. "I will not let your voice be forgotten." That promise was still burning. So he searched for a quiet place outside the city walls, where olive trees whispered in the breeze. And there, in a soft green garden near the shrine of a hero named Academos, he began to build. No stone walls at first, no great buildings, only a group of curious minds, a circle of young men, a teacher, and his questions. He called it the Academy. Here, there were no rulers, no kings, no gold or glory, only ideas. Here, no one gave all the answers. Instead, they asked, "What is truth? Can justice be taught? Is the soul born wise, or does it learn?" Plato sat with his students under the trees. They debated. They argued. They laughed. Sometimes they sat in silence, letting their thoughts rise like smoke into the sky. It was not like other schools. No simple lessons, no strict rules. It was alive, and it grew. More students came, more minds opened, and Plato, he kept writing. Scroll after scroll, dialogues, full of questions and dreams. He wrote of love, of courage, of the perfect world, the world of forms. In that world, he said, everything is pure, perfect beauty, perfect justice, perfect good. This world, the one we live in, just a shadow, a reflection, and the job of the philosopher to turn and face the light. Plato taught them the famous story. Imagine people in a dark cave, chained, watching shadows on the wall. That's all they know. Then one person escapes. He sees the real world, the sun, the truth. He comes back, tries to tell the others, but they laugh. They don't believe him. Plato would pause here and look into the eyes of his students. That man, he would say softly, is the philosopher. Many listened. Some changed. Some would one day become teachers themselves. One of them, a boy with a sharp mind and a questioning heart, would later become famous too. His name? Aristotle. But in those early days, Plato did not care about fame. He cared about the future, about planting seeds, not just in the earth, but in the soul. The academy became more than a place. It became a movement, a light in the dark, a voice in the silence, a place where young minds could dream without fear. And Plato? He watched it grow. He saw young men become thinkers. He saw questions turn into ideas. He saw sparks become fire. Sometimes, he would walk through the garden at night, listening to the wind, and whisper, "Socrates, can you hear them? They're still asking, still searching." He smiled, because he knew his teacher's death was not the end. It was the beginning. The academy stood for many years, long after Plato was gone, long after the olive trees stopped whispering. But his words, his lessons, his questions, they lived on, and they still live. Now, because every school, every library, every place where someone asks, "Why?" carries the flame he lit. A dream becomes a school. A school becomes a legacy, and a legacy becomes immortal. Chapter 7. The World of Forms. There is a world beyond what we see. Plato stood in the garden of the academy. The sun was setting. Golden light touched the olive trees. His students sat quietly around him, eyes wide, hearts open. He held up a small wooden cup. Simple, rough, nothing special. "Tell me," he asked, "what is this?" "A cup," one student said. "A tool for drinking," said another. Plato smiled. "Yes," he said, "but what if this cup is only a shadow?" The students looked at each other, confused. Plato's voice dropped to a whisper. "What if, behind this cup, there is a perfect cup? A form that never breaks, never fades, never changes. A cup that lives in the world of ideas. And this one, the one we hold," he lifted it, "is just a copy, a reflection." The garden was silent. Only the wind moved. Plato set the cup down, and then he told them his greatest idea. "There are two worlds," he said. "One is the world we know, the world of touch, of smell, of sound, the world of things that grow and die, trees, tables, horses, people. This world is always changing, always breaking, always moving. It is beautiful, but not perfect. Then there is the other world, the world we cannot touch. But we can feel it in our minds. The world of forms, perfect shapes, perfect ideas, perfect truth. This world does not change. It is eternal, unseen, but more real than anything we hold in our hands. Think of a circle," Plato said. "Have you ever seen a perfect one? One with no flaw at all?" The students shook their heads. "But you can imagine it," he said. "You know what it is. That circle lives in the world of forms." He spoke of beauty. A face may be lovely, a flower may be bright. But true beauty is more than that. It is not one thing. It is something behind all things. A form, an idea, a flame that lights everything we love. He spoke of justice. Laws can change. Judges can be wrong, but justice itself? It must be something more, something pure, strong, and real. Even if we cannot see it, we can feel it. Inside, in our hearts, not everyone understood. Some said, "But where is this world? Show us." Plato just smiled. "You can't see it with your eyes," he said. "Only with your mind. Close your eyes and think. What does perfect good look like? What does perfect truth feel like?" Some students laughed, but others sat very still. and in their silence, they began to see. Plato told them a story about a cave. People live there, deep inside, chained in darkness. They watch shadows on a wall. That is all they know. To them, the shadows are real. Then one person breaks free. He climbs out of the cave. It's hard. It's painful. The light burns his eyes. But then he sees the sun, the sky, the truth. He goes back to the others. He tells them, "You are watching shadows. There's more. There's a world outside." But they laugh. They call him mad. They hate him. They would rather live in the dark. Plato looked at his students. "That," he said, "is the life of a philosopher." He knew it would not be easy. Many would doubt him. Many would say, "These are only dreams." But he believed. He had seen too much, felt too much to go back. He believed that the soul came from that higher world, that it had seen the forms before birth, and that inside us is a memory of truth, of good, of beauty. And if we live well, if we think deeply, if we turn toward the light, we can remember. Plato's students listened, some with fire in their eyes, some with tears, because in his voice, they heard something more than lessons. They heard a call to rise, to wonder, to turn away from the shadows and search for the light. Chapter 8. The Light That Never Dies. Centuries pass, but the light remains. The garden is quiet now. The olive trees still stand, but their teacher is gone. Plato is no more. His body has returned to the earth, but his voice, his words, his questions, they still travel across time. He lived for over 80 years. He taught, he wrote, he dreamed. He built a school. He built a legacy. He searched for truth with every breath, and in the end, he died as he lived, peacefully, thoughtfully, with honor. No grand tomb, no golden statue, just silence and scrolls full of wisdom. The academy continued. His students kept learning. Some became teachers, some became leaders. One of them, the boy with sharp eyes and sharp thoughts, Aristotle, would go on to teach a young prince who would become known to the world as Alexander the Great. But even Alexander, with all his power, could not conquer the world of ideas that Plato had opened. Because ideas cannot die. They move from one mind to another, like fire passed from candle to candle. Plato's dialogues were copied, studied, shared. In Rome, in Egypt, in far-off lands. Through war, through peace, through dark and golden ages. His words kept walking forward. Centuries passed. Empires rose and fell. Languages changed. Kings came and vanished. But still, somewhere, someone was reading Plato, still asking, what is justice? What is good? What is the soul? He became more than a man. He became a mirror, showing every age what it was missing. And now, here we are, you, listening to his story, feeling his thoughts echo in your own heart. Because this is not just his story, it is yours too. Have you ever wondered, why am I here? Have you ever looked at the stars and felt something stir? Have you ever asked, what is right? What is true? What is beautiful? Then you have met Plato. You may never stand in the academy. You may never hold a scroll in ancient Greek. But when you stop and think and search, you are walking his path. And that is the light that never dies. It does not need a temple or a throne. It needs only a single mind, open, brave, alive. The world is loud now, faster, brighter, more crowded than ever. But the questions, they remain. And Plato is still whispering, through books, through teachers, through the quiet voice inside you that says, think, ask, wonder. In a world full of noise, he gave us silence. In a world full of answers, he gave us questions. And in a world that forgets too fast, he gave us something that endures. So, light your candle, pass it on, and remember, the boy from Athens, the student of Socrates, the builder of the academy, he is still here, in you.